The clock struck 11, and Melissa's world was ending in slow motion. She stood in the center of her small apartment, surrounded by silence so thick it pressed against her chest like a living thing. Outside, the packed grounds hummed with distant laughter, wolves gathering for the evening run, families tucked safe in their homes, couples walking beneath the moon that had always promised her nothing but loneliness. Her hands trembled as she stared at the crumpled notice on her kitchen table, the council's seal gleaming like a brand in the lamplight. 24 hours to secure a mate bond. Failure to comply will result in immediate exile and dissolution of pact ties. The words blurred. She'd read them 17 times since dawn, each syllable carving deeper into the hollow space where hope used to live. Melissa Loran had survived 26 years without a mate, and her pack had never let her forget it. Not when her younger sister bonded at 19. Not when her mother stopped meeting her eyes at family dinners. Not when the whispers followed her through the market, broken, unwanted, cursed. She'd built walls around the ache, told herself she didn't need the bond that came so easily to everyone else. She had her work at the archives, her tiny apartment on the edge of pack lands, her books and her silence. But the council didn't care about survival. They cared about tradition. And tradition demanded that every wolf of mating age be bonded by their 27th year, or be removed. For the good of the pack. For the strength of the bloodlines. For 100 ancient reasons that had nothing to do with the woman standing alone in her kitchen, feeling her entire existence crumble into ash. Her phone buzzed. Another message from her mother. Don't embarrass us tomorrow. Fix this. Melissa's breath caught. Fix this. As if she hadn't spent years trying. As if every male in the pack hadn't already looked through her like glass, their eyes sliding past to someone prettier, stronger, more worthy of the bond. As if her wolf hadn't held itself raw every full moon, searching for a connection that never came. She was out of time. Out of options. And that's when the idea struck, terrible, desperate, and utterly insane. The Wanderer's Market. It operated in the shadows of pack territory, a place where rogues and loners traded goods, information, and occasionally, services. She'd heard rumors. Wolves without packs who would do anything for coin. Bonds that could be faked long enough to satisfy the council's inspection. Temporary arrangements that dissolved as quickly as they formed. It was dangerous. Probably illegal. Definitely shameful. But shame was a luxury she could no longer afford. The market materialized like smoke in the abandoned district near the old rail yard, tucked beneath crumbling overpasses where streetlights had long since died. Melissa pulled her hood lower, her heart hammering against her ribs as she moved through clusters of rogues and wanderers. The air reeked of wet concrete and wild magic, untethered, unpredictable. She'd brought everything she had. $2,000 in cash, saved over 3 years from her archive salary. It wasn't much. But it was enough to buy one night. One signature. One man willing to stand before the council and lie. Looking for something, sweetheart? The voice came from her left, a scarred wolf with yellow eyes and a grin that made her skin crawl. Melissa stepped back, shaking her head, but others were already closing in. Curious. Hungry. She was pack-born, and it showed in every nervous movement. I need, her voice cracked. She forced steel into it. I need someone to pose as my mate. Just for tomorrow morning. Council inspection. I can pay. Laughter rippled through the small crowd. Pack girls desperate, someone muttered. What did you do, Omega? Piss off daddy. Heat flooded her cheeks, but she stood her ground. 2,000. Cash. You show up, you sign the bond registration, you leave. No questions. The yellow-eyed wolf stepped closer, his breath hot against her face. 2,000 for a fake bond. You're either stupid or hiding something. Which is it? Neither. I'm out of time. Then you're desperate. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. How about this? I'll do it for free. But you owe me a favor. A real big one. Melissa's wolf snarled inside her chest, every instinct screaming danger. She jerked back, but his grip tightened, claws pricking her skin. Let go. She's not interested. The voice cut through the chaos like a blade, low, calm, and laced with authority so absolute that every wolf in the vicinity went utterly still. Melissa's head snapped up. He stood at the edge of the circle, half hidden in shadow. Tall. Broad-shouldered. A dark hood obscuring most of his face, but she could see his jaw, sharp and unforgiving, and the faint glow of eyes that burned like molten gold in the darkness. The yellow-eyed wolf released her immediately, stepping back with his head bowed. Didn't know she was spoken for. She is now. The stranger moved forward, and the crowd parted like water. He stopped in front of Melissa, towering over her, his presence a physical weight that made her wolf press low in submission. No. Recognition. Her breath hitched. You need a mate for tomorrow morning, he said quietly. Not a question. A statement. Melissa nodded, not trusting her voice. 2000. Yes. He was silent for a long moment, studying her with those burning eyes. Then he extended one gloved hand. Deal. She should have asked questions. Should have demanded his name, his history, his intentions. But time was a noose tightening around her neck, and this man, dangerous and unknown, was the only rope she had left. Melissa placed the cash in his palm. And sealed her fate with a stranger who smelled like midnight storms and forbidden power. The stranger didn't speak as they left the market. Melissa followed him through winding alleys and forgotten streets, her pulse a wild drumbeat in her ears. Every instinct screamed that she was walking into danger. This man moved like a predator, silent and controlled, his presence so commanding that even the feral dogs lurking in the shadows slunk away. But what choice did she have? Dawn was 6 hours away, and the council's judgment would be swift and merciless. He finally stopped at a 24-hours diner on the outskirts of neutral territory, its neon sign flickering weakly against the night sky. Through the smudged windows, Melissa could see a handful of late-night patrons, humans, oblivious to the supernatural world that prowled around them. We need to talk, he said, his first words since accepting her offer. His voice was rough velvet, the kind that made her wolf stir with unsettling interest. Inside. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and grease. They took a corner booth, far from prying eyes. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, Melissa got her first real look at him. He'd pulled back his hood. And oh, God. He was devastating. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and those eyes, molten gold ringed with darker amber, ancient and intelligent. His dark hair was slightly too long, falling across his forehead in a way that should have softened his features but somehow made him look more dangerous. There was a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, faint but visible. He wore simple clothes, dark jeans, a black shirt, but carried himself like royalty. Melissa's mouth went dry. Tell me why you're really doing this, he said, leaning back against the worn vinyl seat. His gaze pinned her in place, reading her like an open book. She swallowed hard. I told you. Council inspection. I know what you told me. I want the truth. His eyes narrowed. You're pack-born. I can smell it on you, Silvercrest, unless I'm mistaken. You've got a home, a family. So why is a woman like you paying a stranger in a rogue market to fake a mate bond? Heat crept up her neck. Does it matter? Yes. The single word held such absolute certainty that Melissa found herself answering before she could stop herself. Because I'm broken. The confession tasted like ashes. 26 years old and unmated. My pack, they have rules. Ancient laws that say every wolf must bond before their 27th birthday or face exile. I've tried. God, I've tried. But no one wants, her voice cracked. No one wants me. Something flickered in his expression. Not pity. Something sharper, more dangerous. They're fools. The statement was so matter-of-fact, so utterly certain, that Melissa's breath caught. She stared at him, searching for mockery, but found only a fierce intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. You don't know me, she whispered. I know enough. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his presence overwhelming in the small space. I know you're brave enough to walk into a rogue market alone. Smart enough to negotiate. Desperate enough to trust a stranger. And strong enough to survive in a pack that's already failed you. His jaw tightened. That's more than most wolves I've met. Melissa's wolf whimpered, actually whimpered, at the praise. She crushed the reaction down, but not before she saw his nostrils flare slightly. He'd scented it. The flutter of hope, the traitorous warmth spreading through her chest. Mortified, she looked away. What about you? Why would you agree to this? $2,000 isn't that much for, whatever this is. I have my reasons. That's not an answer. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. No. It's not. The waitress appeared, bored and half asleep, to take their order. Melissa asked for coffee she wouldn't drink. The stranger ordered nothing, his attention never leaving her face. When they were alone again, he said, here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, I'll meet you at the council hall at 7. We'll present ourselves for the mate bond registration. I'll sign whatever documents they require, play the role of your devoted husband, and satisfy their inspection. And then I leave. We both walk away. His voice was flat, emotionless. No bond. No commitment. No future. Just like you asked. It was exactly what she needed. Exactly what she'd paid for. So why did it feel like a knife twisting in her chest? There's one problem, Melissa said quietly. The council doesn't just check paperwork. They verify the bond. If there's no mark, no scent sharing, they'll know immediately that it's fake. The stranger went very still. A mark. Yes. The mating mark. She forced herself to meet his eyes. It doesn't have to be complete. Just enough to show the connection. A partial mark will fade in a few days after you leave. But without it, we'll both be caught in the lie. Silence stretched between them, thick and dangerous. You're asking me to mark you, he said slowly. I'm asking you to help me survive. Her hands clenched beneath the table. I know it's not part of the original deal. I can try to get more money. I don't want your money. The words were a low growl that sent shivers down her spine. He stood abruptly, the movement so sudden that Melissa flinched. But he didn't leave. Instead, he braced his hands on the table, leaning down until his face was inches from hers. If I mark you, even partially, it will hurt, he said, his voice rough. The bond will try to complete itself. You'll feel the pull. The need. And fighting it. His eyes blazed. Fighting it is agony. I can handle pain. Can you handle wanting something you can never have? The question hung between them, loaded with meaning she couldn't quite grasp. Melissa's heart hammered. Yes. He searched her face for a long moment, and she saw something flicker in his expression, conflict, regret, and something that looked almost like longing. Finally, he straightened. Then we have a deal, Melissa Laurent. She froze. I never told you my name. His smile was dangerous and beautiful. No. You didn't. And in that moment, Melissa realized she'd made a bargain with someone far more powerful, and far more dangerous, than any rogue in that market. Someone who already knew exactly who she was. They left the diner at midnight. The stranger led Melissa to a motel 3 blocks away, the kind of place that asked no questions and accepted cash. The room was small and sparse, a queen bed with faded sheets, a single lamp casting weak yellow light, and curtains that didn't quite close. It smelled like dust and old cigarettes, but it was neutral territory. Safe. Or as safe as anywhere could be with a man who radiated danger like heat. He locked the door behind them, then turned to face her. In the confined space, he seemed even larger, his presence filling every corner. Melissa's wolf paced restlessly inside her chest, confused by the conflicting signals: danger, safety, threat, mate, wait, no. Not mate. This was business. Survival. Sit, he said, gesturing to the bed. Melissa perched on the edge, her hands twisted in her lap. How do you know my name? He shrugged off his jacket, revealing muscled forearms marked with scars that looked like they'd come from claws. Battle scars. I know a lot of things. That's not an answer. I'm aware. He moved to stand in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. But right now, we have more pressing concerns. The mark needs to be fresh for the council inspection. Which means we do this now, or not at all. Melissa's mouth went dry. Now. You're running out of time, little wolf. In 7 hours, you face exile or me. Choose. The endearment, little wolf, sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. No one had ever called her that. No one had ever looked at her like he was looking at her now, with an intensity that made her feel seen for the first time in her life. She lifted her chin. Do it. Something dark and possessive flashed in his eyes. Stand up. She obeyed, her legs unsteady. He circled behind her, and she felt his presence like a physical touch against her back. His breath stirred the hair at her nape. The mark goes here, he said quietly, his fingers brushing the junction of her neck and shoulder. The touch was feather-light, but it sent electricity racing down her spine. It's going to hurt. And when the bond tries to snap into place, you need to fight it. Don't let it complete. Understand? Yes, she whispered, though she understood nothing except that her entire body was alive with awareness. Tilt your head. Give me access. Melissa did, exposing the vulnerable column of her throat. Her heart thundered so loudly she was certain he could hear it. Behind her, the stranger went utterly still, and she felt the moment his control wavered, a barely audible growl rumbling from his chest. This is your last chance to change your mind, he said, his voice strained. Once I mark you, there's no going back. The bond will be there, dormant but present. Are you absolutely certain? Do it, Melissa said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Please. The word, please, seemed to shatter something in him. He struck. His canines pierced her skin, and white-hot pain exploded through her nerve endings. Melissa gasped, her knees buckling, but his arm banded around her waist, holding her upright against his chest. The pain was terrible and exquisite, burning through her like wildfire. And then it changed. The bond roared to life between them, not partial, not dormant, but massive and overwhelming and right. Power slammed into her, ancient and vast, making her wolf howl in recognition. She felt him everywhere, inside her mind, her soul, her very bones. His strength, his dominance, his carefully controlled fury at a world that had tried to break her. And beneath it all, something that felt impossibly like tenderness. Mine, his wolf snarled through the connection. Ours. Keep her. Protect her. Never let go. No. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be fake, temporary, meaningless. Melissa tried to pull away, to sever the connection, but the bond had other ideas. It wrapped around them both like chains of starlight, binding them together with a permanence that made her gasp. She felt his shock mirror her own, felt the moment he realized what was happening. The mark was completing itself. Fully. Irreversibly. With a growl that was half curse, he wrenched himself back, breaking the physical connection. Melissa stumbled forward, catching herself on the bed. She pressed a hand to her neck, feeling the throb of the mark beneath her fingers, not the partial mark they'd agreed on, but a full mating bite that pulsed with power. What? She gasped. What just happened? Behind her, she heard his ragged breathing. When she turned, he stood with his back to her, his shoulders rigid with tension. In the lamplight, she could see the tremor running through his powerful frame. You weren't supposed to be compatible, he said hoarsely. The bond wasn't supposed to accept me. Accept you? What are you talking about? Fear and confusion spiraled through her. Who are you? He turned slowly, and the expression on his face stopped her heart. Anguish. Fury. And something that looked like resignation. My name, he said quietly, is Alex Thorne. The name hit her like a physical blow. Alex Thorne. The Alpha King. Ruler of the Northern Territories. Commander of the Royal Guard. The most powerful Alpha in 500 years. The wolf who disappeared 3 months ago, abandoning his throne and triggering a succession crisis that had the entire supernatural world in chaos. Melissa's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the bed, staring at him in disbelief. That's impossible. The Alpha King he's in hiding, Alex finished. Being hunted by enemies who want to see my bloodline ended. Which is why I was in that market tonight, laying low until I could figure out who betrayed me. His jaw clenched. I took your offer because I thought a temporary arrangement would give me cover. A reason to be in Silvercrest territory without raising suspicion. But the bond completed itself because apparently, the fates have a twisted sense of humor. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so achingly human it made her chest tight. You were supposed to be incompatible. Every wolf I've ever met has been incompatible. I was certain I'd never find a true mate. The word, mate, hung between them, impossible and terrifying. Melissa touched her neck again, feeling the mark that now bound her to a king. What happens now? Alex's eyes met hers, blazing with an emotion she couldn't name. Now, little wolf, you're the most dangerous woman in the realm. Because you're mine. And there are people who will kill to use you against me. The silence in the motel room was deafening. Melissa couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the truth burning through her veins with every pulse of the mark on her neck. She was mated to the Alpha King. The wolf who controlled armies, who could crush entire packs with a word, who was being hunted by enemies powerful enough to make him hide. And in 6 hours, she had to present him to her council as her husband. They'll know, she whispered, panic clawing up her throat. The moment we walk in, they'll recognize you. No. Alex's voice was firm, controlled. Your council has never seen my face. Most wolves haven't. I kept my identity concealed during my rule, worked through intermediaries and the Royal Guard. They'll sense power, yes, but they won't know who I am. Not unless someone tells them. But your enemies are looking for a king. Not a mated wolf playing husband to a Silvercrest archivist. He crossed to her, crouching down so they were eye level. The position should have made him less intimidating. It didn't. Listen to me, Melissa. We can still do this. I'll attend your council inspection, sign the registration, and we'll both walk away with what we need. You get to stay in your pack. I get a cover story that explains my presence in the territory. Except we can't walk away. She touched the mark again, feeling it throb in response. This bond is complete. You said it yourself, it's permanent. Something flickered in his expression. Bonds can be managed. Kept dormant. If we stay apart, avoid prolonged contact, the pull will eventually fade to background noise. Eventually. How long is eventually? Years. Maybe decades. He said it so casually, as if sentencing them both to a lifetime of aching emptiness was nothing. But it's survivable. Wolves have done it before. Melissa's wolf snarled in protest, hating the idea of separation from this male who smelled like home and safety and everything she'd never known she needed. She crushed the feeling down. And what happens when your enemies find out you're mated? When they realize they can use me against you? They won't find out. Because after tomorrow, you're going back to your normal life. His eyes hardened. You'll work at the archives, live in your apartment, and pretend nothing has changed. I'll disappear. No contact. No messages. Nothing that could draw attention to you. You're asking me to forget you exist. I'm asking you to survive. He reached up, his fingers ghosting along her jawline with devastating gentleness. You deserve a normal life, Melissa. A mate who can give you safety, stability, a future. Not a king with a target on his back and enemies who won't hesitate to hurt you to get to me. The touch sent heat spiraling through her body, the bond singing with approval. She forced herself to pull away. If you really believed that, you would have walked away the moment the bond completed. I should have. But you didn't. Alex stood abruptly, putting distance between them. Get some sleep. We have 5 hours before we need to leave for the council hall. I can't sleep. Not with, she gestured helplessly at the space between them, the invisible thread that pulled taut every time he moved. Not with this. Try. It wasn't a suggestion. He moved to the window, staring out at the dark street beyond. His shoulders were rigid, every line of his body screaming tension. I'll keep watch. Melissa lay back on the bed fully clothed, knowing sleep was impossible. The bond hummed between them, a living thing that demanded acknowledgement. She could feel his emotions bleeding through, guilt, frustration, and beneath it all, a possessive need so fierce it made her shiver. He wanted her. The realization hit like lightning. Not just the bond's artificial pull, but genuine desire. She felt it in the way his hands had trembled when he marked her, the way his voice roughened when he called her, little wolf, the way he stood guard now as if protecting her was the only thing keeping him sane. Alex. Don't. His voice was strained. Please, Melissa. Just, don't. I was only going to ask why you left your throne. Silence stretched for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. Because I discovered that the people I trusted most were plotting to kill me. My beta. My second. Wolves I'd fought beside for decades. They wanted my power, my territory, and they were willing to destroy everything I'd built to get it. Melissa sat up, her heart clenching. Your own pack betrayed you. Not my pack. My inner circle. Bitterness laced his words. I'd been receiving death threats for months, but I dismissed them as the usual political posturing. Until I found concrete evidence, messages, payment records, assassination plans. I had two choices, stay and fight a battle that would tear my kingdom apart, or disappear until I could identify every traitor and cut them out like the cancer they are. So you've been hiding. Hunting. Yes. And failing. He turned from the window, and the defeat in his eyes gutted her. I can't get close enough to gather evidence without risking exposure. Can't trust anyone who knew me before. I've been alone for 3 months, chasing shadows and watching my kingdom crumble from a distance. The confession hung between them, intimate and devastating. Melissa stood, crossing to him before she could second-guess herself. "You're not alone anymore. Melissa. I'm not asking for forever. I'm not asking for anything except, let me help. Tomorrow, after the council inspection, don't disappear. Stay. Let me be your cover story." The words tumbled out, desperate and brave. A mated wolf isn't suspicious. A couple living quietly in Silvercrest while you look for work gives you the perfect excuse to investigate without drawing attention. Alex stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "That would put you in direct danger." "I'm already in danger. The moment you marked me, I became a target." She stepped closer, close enough to feel his heat. "At least this way, I'm a target who can help you find the wolves who betrayed you." "Why would you do this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." "Because you called me brave when my own pack called me broken." Her voice cracked. "Because you looked at me like I mattered. And because..." She swallowed hard. "Because maybe the fates didn't make a mistake. Maybe they knew exactly what they were doing when they bound us together." Alex's control shattered. He pulled her against him, his hands tangling in her hair, his forehead dropping to rest against hers. The bond blazed between them, electric and overwhelming. "This is a terrible idea," he breathed. "I know. You could die. I know. I can't promise you a happy ending." Melissa smiled, her hands fisting in his shirt. "Then promise me you'll fight for one." For a heartbeat, she thought he'd refuse. Then his arms tightened around her, and she felt his surrender through the bond, reluctant, terrified, and achingly hopeful. "Deal, little wolf." Dawn broke cold and merciless over Silvercrest territory. Melissa stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her apartment, staring at the mark on her neck. It was beautiful and terrible, an intricate pattern of silvery lines that resembled a crown wrapped in thorns, pulsing faintly with power. No amount of makeup could hide it. She didn't want to. This mark was her proof. Her salvation. Her doom. Alex emerged from her bedroom wearing clothes they'd picked up from a 24-hour store, dark slacks and a crisp white shirt that made him look devastating and entirely too powerful for the role he was about to play. He'd shaved, tamed his hair, but nothing could diminish the alpha dominance that radiated from him like heat. "Ready?" he asked quietly. Melissa smoothed down her dress, simple, cream-colored, appropriate for a council presentation. "As I'll ever be." They drove to the council hall in silence, the bond humming between them like a plucked string. Melissa's hands trembled in her lap. In 30 minutes, she would either secure her place in the pack or destroy everything. There was no middle ground. The council hall loomed ahead, an ancient stone building at the heart of pack territory, imposing and cold. Wolves were already gathering, early morning runners who'd caught wind of the inspection. Melissa spotted her mother standing near the entrance, arms crossed, her expression carved from ice. "That's my family," Melissa murmured. Alex's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Remember. I'm Alex Thorne, independent contractor, originally from the Western Territories. We met 2 months ago. Whirlwind romance. You can let me do most of the talking." "Okay." They stepped out of the car, and every wolf in the vicinity went silent. Melissa felt their stares like brands, shocked, disbelieving, jealous. She held her head high and walked toward the entrance with Alex at her side, his hand firm against the small of her back. Her mother's eyes widened when she saw the mark. "Melissa, you actually..." She stopped, her gaze shifting to Alex, and something like fear flickered across her face. "Who is this?" "My husband." The word felt foreign but right. "Alex Thorne." Alex inclined his head respectfully, but Melissa felt the predator lurking beneath his civilized veneer. "Mrs. Laurent." "A pleasure." Her mother's throat worked. Up close, she was clearly sensing the power rolling off him in waves, ancient, controlled, crushing. Yes. Of course. The council is waiting inside. The council chamber was exactly as Melissa remembered, circular, with 7 high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle. The elders sat in judgment, their expressions ranging from skeptical to openly hostile. Elder Rourke, the head councilman, leaned forward as they entered. Melissa Loran. You've brought a candidate for mate verification with minutes to spare. His eyes raked over Alex, narrowing. State your name and pack affiliation. Alex Thorne. No pack affiliation. I'm a free wolf. Alex's voice was calm, controlled, revealing nothing. Free wolves are rogues, another elder snapped. We don't accept rogue bonds. With respect, elder, I am not a rogue. I left my birth pack voluntarily to pursue independent contracts. I maintain no hostile intentions toward pack structures and have no criminal record. Alex's eyes glinted dangerously. Unless you'd like to accuse me of something specific. The elder's mouth snapped shut. Elder Rourke studied them both. The mark appears genuine. But we'll need to verify the bond's authenticity. Approach. They moved forward together. Melissa's heart hammered as Elder Rourke stood, placing one gnarled hand on her forehead and the other on Alex's. His power pushed against them, probing, searching for the telltale signs of a forced or false bond. The bond flared in response, massive, blazing, unmistakably real. Elder Rourke jerked back as if burned, his eyes wide. Impossible. This bond is. He stared at Alex with dawning recognition. Not of his face, but of his power. You're mated to your pack member, Alex finished smoothly. Yes. Is that a problem? The tension in the room was suffocating. Elder Rourke looked between them, calculation flickering in his ancient eyes. He knew something was wrong, knew this wolf was far too powerful to be a simple free contractor. But the bond was undeniably real, and that meant challenging it would require evidence he didn't have. No, Elder Rourke said finally. No problem. The bond is verified. Melissa Loran, you are cleared to remain in pack standing. He turned to Alex. As her mate, you'll be granted provisional pack membership. You'll need to register with our administration office and... The doors burst open. A wolf Melissa didn't recognize strode in, tall, scarred, with eyes like chips of ice. He wore the uniform of the Royal Guard, though the insignia had been torn away. Behind him came 3 more guards, all radiating lethal intent. Forgive the interruption, elders, the stranger said, his voice dripping false courtesy. But I'm afraid this bonding cannot stand. Alex went utterly still beside her, every muscle coiled for violence. The stranger's smile was a blade. You see, the wolf calling himself Alex Thorne is actually my brother, Alex interrupted, his voice like gravel. He turned to face the newcomer fully, and Melissa felt rage pouring through their bond in molten waves. Hello, Eric. I wondered when you'd show your face. Eric. The name clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Eric Thorne, the Alpha King's younger brother, second in line for the throne. The wolf who'd been calling for Alex's abdication for months before his disappearance. One of the traitors. Still playing pretend, brother. Eric sneered. Hiding behind false names and desperate omegas. The kingdom needs its king. It's time to come home. The kingdom needs better than a ruler who conspires with traitors. The accusation hung in the air like poison. Eric's expression darkened. Careful, Alex. You're not in a position to make threats. Not with your new mate standing right there. His eyes slid to Melissa, and the promise in them made her blood run cold. Such a fragile thing. It would be tragic if something happened to her. Alex moved faster than thought, putting himself between Melissa and Eric, a growl rumbling from his chest that shook the stone walls. "Touch her and I'll rip your throat out. There's the brother I remember." Eric laughed, cold and cruel. "Always so protective. It's going to make destroying you so much more satisfying." Elder Rourke stood, his voice sharp with authority. "Enough. This is sacred pack ground. I don't care who you both are, there will be no violence in this chamber." Eric inclined his head mockingly. "Of course, Elder. Forgive me." He stepped back but didn't leave. "I'll be watching, brother. Enjoy your little domestic fantasy while it lasts." He swept out, his guards following. The silence he left behind was deafening. Elder Rourke turned to Alex, his expression grave. "Alpha King." The title fell like a hammer blow. Every wolf in the room dropped to one knee, every wolf except Melissa, who stood frozen beside her mate, her world tilting on its axis. Alex helped her to her feet gently. "Yes," he said quietly. "I am Alex Thorne, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. And this," he pulled Melissa closer, his arm around her waist, "is my true mate. My queen." The council chamber erupted into chaos. Wolves who'd been kneeling scrambled to their feet, voices overlapping in shock and confusion. Melissa's mother stood frozen, her face pale as death. Elder Rourke's expression had transformed from stern authority to barely concealed panic. Having the Alpha King and his brother face off in his council hall was a political nightmare of catastrophic proportions. But all Melissa could focus on was the word echoing in her skull. "Queen. I need air," she whispered, pulling away from Alex's embrace. The Bond protested immediately, a sharp ache blooming in her chest, but she couldn't breathe, couldn't think with everyone staring at her like she'd grown a second head. "Melissa," Alex reached for her, but she was already moving, pushing through the stunned wolves toward the exit. She made it to the courtyard before her legs gave out. She sank onto a stone bench beneath an ancient oak, gulping in cold morning air that did nothing to slow her racing heart. Queen. She was supposed to be queen. She, the broken wolf, the unwanted daughter, the woman her own pack had tried to exile, was mated to the most powerful alpha in the realm. It was insane. Impossible. Footsteps approached, but they weren't Alex's. Too light, too careful. "You've made quite the mess, little sister." Melissa's head snapped up. Her sister, Sharon, stood a few feet away, perfect as always in a designer dress that probably cost more than Melissa's monthly salary. Mated at 19 to a wealthy pack beta, favored daughter, everything Melissa had never been. "I didn't mean for this to happen," Melissa said quietly. "Didn't you?" Sharon moved closer, her expression unreadable. "You always were dramatic. But this? Mating the Alpha King just to avoid exile. Even for you, that's extreme." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like? Enlighten me." Sharon's voice turned sharp. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you paid some stranger to fake a bond, and now you're stuck with consequences way above your pay grade." The accusation stung because it was partially true. Melissa had paid a stranger. She just hadn't known who she was buying. "I was desperate. And now you're a liability." Sharon crouched down, meeting her eyes. For a moment, Melissa saw something that might have been concern beneath the judgment. "Did you hear what his brother said? There are wolves hunting him, Melissa. Wolves powerful enough to make a king run and hide. And now they know about you." "I know. Do you? Do you really understand what you've walked into?" Sharon gripped her shoulders. "You're not just some archivist anymore. You're a target. A weakness. They'll come for you to get to him, and when they do," her voice cracked. "You're not a fighter, Melissa. You've never trained for combat. You don't have the skills to survive in his world. Tears burned in Melissa's eyes. So what am I supposed to do? Reject the bond? Abandon my mate? If it keeps you alive? Yes. You don't mean that. Sharon's hands dropped away. No. I don't. But I'm terrified for you. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. I've been terrible to you. We all have. But you're still my sister, and I don't want to watch you die because you were brave enough to choose survival. Before Melissa could respond, Alex appeared in the courtyard entrance. His gaze swept over them, lingering on Sharon with cool assessment before settling on Melissa. We need to go. Now. The urgency in his voice sent ice down her spine. What's wrong? Eric didn't come alone. My sources just confirmed that royal guards, loyal to him, have surrounded the pack territory. They're preparing to move in. Sharon stood, her face hardening. How many? 50. Maybe more. Alex's jaw clenched. They're calling it a protective escort to bring me back to the throne. But it's a siege. You need to run, Sharon said immediately. Both of you. Get out of Silvercrest before they close the net. No. Alex's voice was absolute. Running makes us look guilty. And it leaves your pack vulnerable to retaliation when Eric doesn't find us here. Then what? We negotiate. He looked at Melissa, and she saw the weight of kingship in his eyes, the burden of making impossible choices. I'll meet with Eric under parley terms. Hear what he wants. Buy time to figure out our next move. That's suicide, Melissa breathed. He's trying to kill you. Not here. Not in front of witnesses. Alex moved to her side, his hand cupping her face with devastating gentleness. He wants the throne, but he needs legitimacy. Killing me outright would make him a usurper. No, he'll try to force my abdication, claim I'm unfit to rule because I abandoned my responsibilities. But you didn't abandon them. You were betrayed. With no proof. No evidence except my word against his. Bitterness laced his words. The council members who helped him cover their tracks were thorough. Without concrete evidence, it's a he said situation. And Eric has been playing the loyal brother, the concerned second, for months. He has the political advantage. Melissa's mind raced. Then we find proof. There isn't time. There's always time. She stood, the beginnings of a plan forming. Eric knows you're here. He knows we're mated. But he doesn't know what I am, who I am. He sees a weak Omega, a liability. Someone not worth his attention. Alex's eyes narrowed. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that the royal archives are in the capital. And if Eric has been plotting against you for months, there will be records. Messages. Evidence. Her voice grew stronger. I'm an archivist, Alex. I know how to find information people try to hide. Absolutely not. You're not going anywhere near the capital. You don't get to decide that. She met his gaze steadily, letting him feel her determination through the bond. I'm your mate. Your queen. That means I fight beside you, not behind you. Melissa. She's right. Sharon's voice was quiet but firm. Let her help. She's smarter than any of us gave her credit for. Alex looked between them, conflict raging in his expression. Then his shoulders sagged slightly, and Melissa felt his reluctant acceptance through the bond. If you do this, you take guards. My guards. Wolves I trust with my life. I thought you couldn't trust anyone from your inner circle. I can't. But there are younger guards, wolves who joined after Eric started his plotting. They're loyal. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. I'm sending 2 of them to escort you. They'll get you into the archives without raising suspicion. And what will you do? What I do best. His smile was all teeth and danger. I'll remind my dear brother exactly why I'm the Alpha King. He pulled her into his arms, and Melissa melted into the embrace, storing the feeling of safety for the dangerous hours ahead. Through the bond, she felt his fear for her, his pride in her courage, and beneath it all, a love so fierce it took her breath away. Come back to me, he whispered against her hair. Always, she promised. It was a promise neither of them was sure she could keep. The Royal Archives stood at the heart of the capital, a fortress of knowledge wrapped in stone and magic, protected by wards that had stood for centuries. Melissa had dreamed of visiting this place her entire career, imagining herself wandering the endless corridors of history in peace and wonder. She'd never imagined she'd be breaking into it. Stay close, murmured Gerald, one of the guards Alex had sent. He was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes and a fighter's build. His partner, Nicole, moved like a shadow on Melissa's other side, all lethal grace and watchful silence. We've got 10 minutes before the shift change. After that, security doubles. They'd entered through a service entrance, using credentials Gerald had acquired through contacts Melissa didn't ask about. The archive stretched before them, row upon row of shelves climbing into darkness, filled with documents that chronicled every major decision, every royal decree, every piece of correspondence for the past 1,000 years. Finding evidence of Eric's betrayal in this labyrinth should have been impossible. But Melissa knew something Eric didn't. Archivists were obsessive about organization. And royal correspondence followed strict protocols. If Eric had been communicating with co-conspirators, those messages would have been logged, categorized, and stored according to date and sender, even if the content had been destroyed. Where? Nicole's voice was barely a breath. Royal Correspondence, Alpha King's office, last 6 months. Melissa moved with purpose now, her expertise overriding her fear. Section 7, Subsection 12. This way. They navigated the maze of knowledge, Melissa's mind cataloging every turn. Her fingers itched to touch the ancient texts they passed, but there was no time for wonder. Only urgency. Section 7 loomed ahead, a restricted area marked with wards that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Gerald stepped forward, producing a small crystal that pulsed with Alex's power signature. The wards recognized their king's authority and parted like water. Smart, Nicole murmured appreciatively. Inside, filing cabinets lined the walls, organized by date and category. Melissa went straight for the drawer labeled Alpha King, Personal Correspondence, September NOV. Her hands trembled as she pulled it open. Empty. No. The word escaped as a wounded sound. No, 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 they can't have destroyed everything. Look for backup logs, Gerald suggested. Places that keep records of what was filed, even if the originals are gone. Of course. Archives always kept metadata. Melissa spun, scanning the room until she spotted it, a terminal in the corner, dusty from disuse but still functional. She rushed to it, her fingers flying over the keys. The system was old, clunky, but she knew its language. Years of working in archives had taught her how to navigate these bureaucratic fossils. She pulled up the correspondence logs, filtering by sender and date. And there it was. Message after message, logged but deleted. Sender, Eric Thorne. Recipients, various names she didn't recognize. But the timestamps told a story, a pattern of communication that spiked in the weeks before Alex's disappearance, then went silent immediately after. I found something, she breathed. But the actual messages are gone. Just the log entries remain. Can you trace the recipients? Nicole asked. Melissa's fingers flew. Give me a minute. The names started to resolve as she cross-referenced them with the master registry. Her blood ran cold. These are all high-ranking wolves. Council members. Guard commanders. Even, she stopped, staring at the screen in horror. Even wolves in Alex's inner circle. Gerald, one of these names is, it's Captain Rourke. Gerald went pale. My former commanding officer. He was the one who recommended me for the Royal Guard. Is he one of the traitors? I don't know. He always seemed loyal, but... Gerald's hands clenched into fists. If he's been working with Eric this whole time, then everything I thought I knew. An alarm shrieked through the archives. We've been made, Nicole snarled, already moving toward the exit. Someone triggered the security system. The door burst open. Royal guards poured in, not the young wolves loyal to Alex, but older ones wearing Eric's colors. Leading them was a wolf Melissa recognized from the council chamber, one of Eric's personal guards. Well, he drawled. The little queen, caught stealing from the royal archives. His Highness Eric will be very interested to hear about this. Nicole and Gerald moved to flank Melissa, weapons drawn. Stand down, Nicole commanded. We're here on the Alpha King's authority. The Alpha King abandoned his throne. Eric Thorne is regent now, and you're trespassing. The guard's smile was cruel. Surrender the woman, and we'll go easy on you both. Like hell, Gerald growled. They attacked. Nicole moved like lightning, taking down 2 guards before they could blink. Gerald fought with brutal efficiency, protecting Melissa's flank while she frantically tried to copy the log files to a portable drive. The terminal beeped, 50% complete, 60, 70. A guard broke through their defense, lunging for Melissa. She threw herself backward, crashing into a filing cabinet. Pain exploded through her shoulder, but the drive clicked, download complete. She ripped it free just as Nicole grabbed her arm. Time to go. They ran. The archives became a blur of shelves and shadows, guards shouting behind them. Melissa clutched the drive like it was made of diamonds. This was it, the proof they needed, the evidence that Eric had been conspiring against Alex months before his disappearance. They burst out of a side exit into blinding sunlight. A car screeched to a stop in front of them, Alex behind the wheel, his eyes blazing with relief and fury. Get in. They dove into the vehicle. Alex floored it, tires screaming as they peeled away from the archives. Behind them, more guards poured out, but they were already gone, swallowed by the capital's winding streets. Did you get it? Alex demanded, weaving through traffic with dangerous precision. Melissa held up the drive, her hands shaking. Message logs. Names. Dates. Enough to prove Eric was planning something before you disappeared. You beautiful, brilliant, insane woman. Alex's voice was rough with emotion. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. She leaned forward, gripping his shoulder. Alex, one of the names on that list, it's Captain Rourke. Gerald's former commander. Alex's jaw clenched. Then we know who else is compromised. What happened with Eric? Did you negotiate? We talked. He made his position clear, abdicate peacefully and he'll let you live. Refuse, and he'll declare me unfit and take the throne by force. Alex's hands tightened on the wheel. He gave me 24 hours to decide. We have proof now. We can expose him. Logs aren't enough. We need the actual messages, or testimony from one of his co-conspirators. Alex's expression hardened with determination. But this is a start. A damn good start. Through the bond, Melissa felt something shift, hope, fierce and bright, cutting through the darkness that had suffocated them both. They were fighting back now. Together. Where are we going? She asked. Alex's smile was dangerous and beautiful. To find someone who can help us turn these logs into a weapon. Someone Eric never expected me to trust again. Who? My father's former advisor. The wolf who taught me everything about politics, strategy, and surviving betrayal. His eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. If anyone can help us bring Eric down, it's her. The safe house was hidden deep in neutral territory, a cabin surrounded by ancient pines and protected by wards so old they hummed with forgotten magic. Alex pulled up to the entrance just as dusk painted the sky in shades of blood and gold. She lives here? Melissa asked, eyeing the modest structure that looked nothing like a place where political masterminds would hide. Madame Thea doesn't do ostentatious. Alex helped her out of the car, his hand lingering at her waist. She was my father's closest friend and advisor for 40 years. When he died and I took the throne, she retired. Said she'd served her time and wanted peace. Will she help us? If she believes we're in the right. He squeezed her hand. And she will. Thea can smell a traitor from miles away. The door opened before they could knock. The woman who stood in the doorway was ancient and ageless all at once, white hair braided with silver thread, eyes like storm clouds, and a presence that made Melissa's wolf press low in respect. This was an elder wolf, one who'd survived centuries and accumulated wisdom that went beyond mere years. Alex Thorne. Her voice was smoke and honey. I wondered when you'd finally come to your senses and seek help. Madame Thea. Alex bowed, a gesture of genuine respect. I need your counsel. Of course you do. And this must be the mate who has the entire supernatural world in an uproar. Thea's gaze settled on Melissa, sharp and assessing. Melissa Lauron. The archivist who accidentally married a king. Come inside, child. Let me look at you properly. Inside, the cabin was lined with books and artifacts, comfortable in a way that spoke of accumulated memories. Thea gestured them to sit by the fireplace, then settled into a chair that seemed molded to her form. Show me what you found, she said simply. Melissa handed over the drive. Thea plugged it into a laptop, surprisingly modern amid the ancient decor, and her expression darkened as she reviewed the files. Minutes passed in heavy silence. Finally, she leaned back. Eric has been busy. These recipients, half of them are on the High Council. He's been building a coalition to challenge your rule for at least 8 months, Alex. Probably longer. Can we use this to expose him? Melissa asked. Logs alone? No. Too easy to claim they're fabricated. Thea's fingers drummed on the armrest. But they give us names. And names give us leverage. If we can flip one of these conspirators, get them to testify against Eric. Who would break first? Alex leaned forward, his tactical mind already working. Thea highlighted a name. Commander Vale. He's ambitious but cowardly. If we confront him with evidence and offer immunity, he'll crack. Where is he? Attending the Lunar Gala. Tomorrow night. At the Royal Palace. Thea's smile was sharp. Eric is hosting it as acting regent, a transparent grab for legitimacy. Every major pack leader will be there. Alex's expression turned predatory. Then so will we. That's suicide, Melissa protested. Eric will have guards everywhere. Exactly. Which means he can't move against us openly without looking like a tyrant in front of witnesses. Alex stood, pacing. We attend the gala. We confront Commander Vale publicly with the evidence. And we force Eric to defend his actions in front of the entire supernatural community. And if Vale doesn't break, if he denies everything, then we have a backup plan. Thea pulled another file from her desk, physical, not digital. I've been investigating on my own since Alex disappeared. Eric made a mistake 3 weeks ago. He transferred a large sum of money to an offshore account, payment for hired assassins to ensure certain obstacles were removed from his path. Melissa's blood ran cold. He tried to have Alex killed. And failed, obviously. But the transaction trail exists. Combined with the message logs and testimony from Vale, we'll have enough to bring formal charges of treason against Eric before the High Council. Alex crossed to Thea, gripping her shoulders gently. Why didn't you contact me with this information? Because you needed to find your own strength first, boy. And your mate. Thea's eyes softened as she looked at Melissa. The bond between you two, it's more than politics. It's destiny. You make each other braver, smarter, stronger. That's what will defeat Eric. Not just evidence, but the unshakable unity he can never replicate. Melissa felt warmth bloom through the bond, Alex's love, his trust, his absolute certainty that they would survive this together. We need to prepare, Alex said. If we're walking into the gala, we need allies. Guards we can trust. Already arranged. Thea gestured to the window. Outside, wolves materialized from the trees, dozens of them, wearing the old royal colors. Veterans, loyal to Alex's father, who'd been waiting for their true king to return. Your father's former guard. They've been in hiding, waiting for the call. Now they're yours. Tears burned in Alex's eyes. I thought I was alone. You were never alone. Just lost for a while. Thea stood, moving to a cabinet and retrieving two items, ornate dagger and a silver circlet. These belong to your father. The dagger for protection. The circlet. She placed it in Melissa's hands. For the queen who earned her crown through courage, not birthright. Melissa stared at the delicate silver, shaped like thorns and moonlight. I can't. You already are. Alex took the circlet, placing it gently on her head. Through the bond, she felt his fierce pride, his unshakable belief in her. You walked into danger to save me. You found evidence when there was none. You stood beside me when anyone sane would have run. You're my queen, Melissa. In every way that matters. The circlet settled onto her brow like it had been made for her. The next night, they arrived at the royal palace in a car that gleamed like dark water. Melissa wore a gown the color of midnight, the silver circlet catching the light. Alex was devastating in formal attire, every inch the Alpha King returning to claim his throne. The gala was already in full swing, hundreds of wolves in glittering finery, music flowing through the grand ballroom. Conversations died as they entered. Every eye turned to them. Eric stood on the dais at the far end, frozen mid-speech. For one beautiful moment, Melissa saw pure terror flash across his face. Then Alex's voice rang out, amplified by alpha power, commanding absolute attention. Eric Thorne. I challenge your regency and accuse you of high treason against the crown. The room erupted into chaos. But they were ready. Commander Vale tried to run. Alex's guards caught him at the door. Thea appeared with the financial records, spreading them across a table for all to see. Vale crumbled under the weight of evidence and immunity offers, his confession spilling out in front of dozens of witnesses. Eric raged, threatened, demanded loyalty, but his coalition crumbled like sand. Without Vale's silence, without the shadows to hide in, he was just one wolf against a united front. By midnight, Eric was in custody. The High Council formally reinstated Alex as Alpha King. And Melissa stood beside him, no longer the broken wolf from Silvercrest, but a queen who'd helped save a kingdom. Months later, the kingdom had transformed. Melissa stood on the balcony of the royal palace, watching the sun rise over territories that had finally found peace. Behind her, she could hear the staff preparing for the day, quiet efficiency replacing the tension that had gripped these halls for so long. Eric was imprisoned, awaiting trial. His co-conspirators had been removed from their positions. And Alex had begun the careful work of rebuilding trust within his kingdom. But this morning wasn't about politics or duty. This morning was about them. You're up early, Alex's voice rumbled as strong arms wrapped around her waist from behind. He pressed a kiss to the mark on her neck, the crown and thorns that had become a symbol of their bond, their survival, their love. Couldn't sleep. Melissa leaned back against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady against her spine. I keep thinking about how different everything is now. Different good or different bad? Different miraculous. She turned in his arms, meeting those golden eyes that had first found her in a rogue market, desperate and alone. 6 months ago, I was facing exile from my pack. I was broken, unwanted, convinced I'd never find my place in the world. And now? His hands cupped her face with such tenderness it made her throat tight. Now I'm a queen. Your queen. She smiled, still marveling at the truth of it. I have a mate who looks at me like I hung the moon. I have purpose, work that matters. Reorganizing the royal archives has been the challenge of my career. I have friends, allies, a family that's finally learning to see me. Your sister visited yesterday, Alex mentioned. While you were in the archives. Sharon was here. Melissa blinked in surprise. She brought a gift. Said she wanted to apologize properly for years of being a monumental ass. Her words, not mine. His smile was warm. She's proud of you. They all are. Your whole family came around once they realized you weren't just playing queen, you were excelling at it. Tears pricked Melissa's eyes. Her relationship with her family would never be perfect, but it was healing. Her mother had written her a letter, a real apology, not just for the exile attempt, but for years of making Melissa feel inadequate. Her father had visited twice, bringing her favorite books from her childhood. And Sharon. Sharon was becoming the sister Melissa had always needed. What about you? Melissa asked softly. Are you healing? Alex was silent for a moment, his gaze distant. The betrayal from Eric, from wolves he'd trusted, had cut deep. But slowly, steadily, he was learning to trust again. I'm getting there. Madame Thea agreed to return as my chief advisor. The new royal guard, including Gerald and Nicole, who you've adopted as your personal shadows, are loyal and competent. And I have you. He pulled her closer. You remind me every day why I fought to keep this throne. Not for power, but to protect wolves who deserve better. That's very noble, Your Majesty. That's very much your influence, my queen. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. You've made me better. Kinder. More patient. Though Thea would argue I still have work to do on that last one. Melissa laughed, the sound bright and free. A year ago, she couldn't have imagined laughing like this, without shadows, without fear, without the weight of unworthiness crushing her chest. There's something I need to tell you, Alex said, his tone shifting to something nervous. Nervous. The Alpha King was nervous. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so endearingly uncertain that Melissa's heart swelled. We've been mated for 3 months. We survived assassination attempts, political coups, and your family dinners. That last one was the most dangerous, Melissa teased. And through it all, I never properly asked you the most important question. He took both her hands in his expression solemn and achingly sincere. Melissa Lauren, you became my mate out of desperation and accident. Fate threw us together when we were both running from different kinds of death. But what we've built since then, it's real. It's everything I never knew I needed. Alex. Let me finish. His voice roughened with emotion. I love you. Not because the bond dictates it, not because you're politically convenient, but because you're brave and brilliant and kind. Because you see the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. Because you walked into hell beside me and never once asked me to face it alone. He dropped to one knee, pulling a ring from his pocket, simple silver, engraved with thorns and moonlight to match her circlet. We're already mated, already married in the eyes of wolf law. But I want to choose you again. Freely. Completely. Will you marry me, Melissa? Not as a bargain or survival tactic, but as two people who love each other. Tears streamed down Melissa's face. Yes. God, yes. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and kissed her with such passion, such absolute devotion, that the bond between them blazed like sunlight. Through it, she felt everything, his love, his gratitude, his unwavering commitment to building a life with her that was more than duty or destiny. It was choice. Pure and simple. The wedding took place a month later, not the political spectacle some had expected, but an intimate ceremony in the palace gardens with only their closest friends and family. Madame Thea officiated. Gerald and Nicole stood as honor guards. Sharon cried through the entire ceremony, clutching their mother's hand. And when Alex kissed his bride beneath an arch of moonflowers, every wolf present felt the sheer rightness of it, a king who'd found his strength, and a queen who'd found her worth. That night, as they danced under the stars, Melissa whispered against Alex's chest, "Thank you." For what? For seeing me when everyone else looked through me. For choosing me when I couldn't choose myself. She pulled back to meet his eyes. For being the stranger who changed my life. Alex's smile was pure sunshine, rare and precious and meant only for her. Thank you for being brave enough to pay a stranger in a rogue market. Best $2,000 anyone ever spent. Best bargain I ever made. Likewise, little wolf. Likewise. They swayed together as music drifted through the garden, two souls who'd found each other in the darkest moment and built something unshakable from the ashes. The broken archivist and the hidden king, now husband and wife, partners in every way that mattered. And as the moon rose full and bright over the kingdom they would rule together, Melissa finally understood what she'd been searching for her entire life. Not perfection. Not power. Just love. Real, chosen, extraordinary love. And she'd found it in the last place she'd ever expected, in the eyes of a stranger who became her everything. Thank you so much for reading Melissa and Alex's story. If you enjoyed this journey from desperate bargain to true love, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another tale of romance, danger, and destiny. Your support means the world to me, beautiful souls. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most desperate choices lead to the most beautiful destinies. See you in the next story.